Lynn Patterson. Y'all are aware she came and spoke earlier this year when we kicked off our Economic Development Strategic Plan. Sometimes I like to call it Who We Want to Be When We Grow Up plan for our community. I, have worked in communities and have found that it's the communities who really have a clear vision of who they want to be, what services they want to provide their citizens. That's how you get there. If you don't know, it's really hard to make a plan to get somewhere if you don't know where you're going. And so this plan brought together county, city, all of the above, took your feedback, those of you who were at that luncheon, took feedback from the community to really see what we want, what we value in our community, what we want to protect. And I know there are always conversations about growth, and just like when you're a child, growing pains happen. That is a real thing, and we all understand that. But what I'm excited about, and really what I think we should be proud of as a community, is that we aren't a community that gained 100,000 people overnight. We're putting systems in place to make sure it's controlled growth, it's positive growth, and always really contributing to our quality of life here. So Lynn is back after her and her team have worked diligently. They have an amazing team with just a wealth of experience in the planning world to present to us, kind of the high-level economic development strategic plan. But I will say we've loved working with Lynn. So hopefully this isn't the end of working together. Lynn is also working on the 400 corridor plan with the county, which is helping update our plan there. Y'all know even when you have a really good plan in place, it helps to update it, and it hasn't been updated in over a decade. So there's some great kind of synergy between these plans, which is really what you want as you move forward. But Lynn is an accomplished urban planning and economic development professional. Her love of places began decades ago when she began to travel internationally and experience various cultures and landscapes. We were talking just a minute ago, she has traveled to over 45 countries. And I tried to ask her favorite, but she had to break it down into categories of favorites. So definitely, if you want to travel, she's someone to pick her brain because she's probably been wherever you're looking at going. She's a former developer and worked with site selection consulting in the past, and she really understands the pressures and triggers of business decisions, guiding location decisions, but I think she also understands what we love about our community and what we want to protect. So one commitment that we can make is that the Chamber nor the Development Authority have ever been pro-growth all the time. We just want to grow, grow, grow. That's not who we are. I think anyone that knows us knows that's not what we want, because we all live here too. And we know that if you moved here a year ago, if you grew up here, you moved here 20 years ago, you probably moved here for a reason. And it's beautiful, and the quality of life here, and that's what this plan really is looking to how we can improve, but also how we can protect. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Lynn Patterson. Help me welcome her.
At one point in time, I was able to say to more countries than I'm years old, but unfortunately, COVID has put a damper on my travel, so I'll say I'm more than 45. Thank you for having me back. How many of you were here at the February meeting? A couple hands. Okay. So that seems like a lifetime ago, right? We had this great conversation. Packed house again today for what we could do in terms of COVID. But I'm really glad to be back to be able to share the work that we've been doing, even with COVID, lots of Zoom meetings. We've been working so closely with Betsy and Christy and other folks up here, the Development Authority, the county and the city, as you mentioned, and it's been an absolute delight. I'm really, really glad to be back, and I'm really proud of the plan that you all have developed. We're just putting the words to it and helping reframe it. But I was working with a fantastic team. Next site, we had Andy Camp with us to do a retail analysis. Did a phenomenal job. I'm happy to share some of the results there. Thomas and Hutton Engineers, we had Ralph Forbes and Ryan Thompson, and I just can't think of Matt's last name. So sorry, Matt. I talk to him all the time. Anyway, we had a fantastic team working with and with myself. And really are pleased as to what we can present. Now, I will say, we cannot go through the whole plan. It would take us about 5 or 6 hours, so I'm going to hit some highlights, try to walk through them, allow some time for questions. I tend to go on and on, so, these guys can do this to me. It's all right. I'm not offended by it. So, let me just kind of walk you through where we are. If you weren't here, we were engaged by the Development Authority and Chamber of Commerce to do county-wide economic development plan. We have a series of steps that we take when we do any kind of planning. First, we need to understand who we're working with. Now, we're all familiar with Dawson. This is not someplace we had never been before. I've been up here. I've got friends who live up here. So it's nice that it was a familiar place, but there's a lot of data we need to understand. We had really fantastic brainstorming sessions with the Development Authority. Actually here, we had a really good conversation. It was not so much talking to, but talking with you all about assets and liabilities and visioning. So we took all that information back to really understand, as Christy had said, what's the goal? What do you want to be when you grow up? What's that vision? What do we all need to be rowing in the same direction towards? And then we're going to give you some tools and strategies to get there. It is a living document. I said this before as well in February, and I stand by it every time. Economic development is not the job of these two or just a few people in the area. It's every single person, every business person, every resident. This is your community. You contribute to it, whether it's formally or informally. These guys, they get to put the policies and the programs in place, but everybody's an ambassador, and everybody contributes to the economic development success of the community. So we put this plan together, and I really would like to start with what the vision that we identified. I think we've all kind of agreed upon, and I'm curious to get your reactions. But as we said, who are you? Why do people want to come to Dawson County? What is it that's attracting? What is the businesses, keeping people here, all the rest, and then what do we want to accomplish in terms of goals? So, it's of course my phone, which I turned off. I'm so sorry. Okay, magic of the Apple Watch. So the vision really was, if we say we're located in scenic North Georgia mountains, Dawson County is a vibrant center. Notice I didn't call it a gateway, not a gateway, but a center, a place where people are coming to, right? Not passing through, but coming to. A center for retail, recreation, professional services, and light industrial development. This is who we heard that we want to be. It's a place where people come to and celebrate the assets that you already have and can build upon. Dawson County likewise prioritizes the well-being of its citizens, businesses, and visitors who contribute. We were talking about this in February. We had no idea how important that word resilient was going to be, right? Okay, we have to turn that off. I'm so sorry. You know, I have a teacher at Georgia Tech, and the student's phone goes off, I answer it. So I'm personally horrified at this point. Somebody does. Really thought I turned that off. So, clearly somebody wants to talk to me, but it's nobody as important as you all. Unless it's my daughters or my mother, and I'll take it. So, the resiliency piece, and I want to talk through what resiliency means, because not a lot of people sort of understand that in the planning context and what it is in terms of economic development. I'll come back to it. But obviously, it's the ability to overcome hardship. And so we'll talk about how we do that in economic development. Finally, Dawson County's unique natural setting is such a fantastic place up here. It is really unparalleled. Amenities, talent, and networks support development, all while maintaining the charm and accessibility of a small community. You said, we don't want to get 100,000 people overnight. That's not who you are. It's not what you want to be. So how do you control and shape and guide growth so that it's not overwhelming, but it just accentuates who you already are? So the key is this accessible, small community. You get who you need to get to. You pick up the phone, you can talk to somebody that matters, everybody matters, but who can get what you need to have done and still have that sense of place and sense of charm, right? So that having been said, and I hope I see nods, everybody's hopefully in agreement with that. Okay. We kind of said we have one overarching goal or principle, and then we've got a bunch of ways to get there. So our overarching goal is that building a resilient community. We recognize, as we're going to walk through each of these, the importance of focusing development efforts. So you have limited infrastructure. You don't want sprawl. You don't want to take the beauty of the the natural environment and sort of run it over with a bunch of graders and houses and buildings, you want to maintain that. So really being able to focus development efforts both in a sort of a fiscally responsible as well as environmentally responsible and frankly societally responsible way. So we'll talk about that. Generating opportunity for business, for economic development. We like to see jobs and we like to see economic activity and revenue for the community. We don't want to see just any jobs, we want to see good quality jobs that improve the quality of life for the residents and the workforce. We want to support community residents. We want to make sure that the residents here have everything they need to be a successful community, to be successful participants in the community, everything from housing to jobs to amenities. And then, of course, protecting and conserving, and I put that last, but it's not the last. It's probably as important as anything else. But it is about protecting and conserving both your natural and your cultural resources. I love that on Sunday you have a champion, right? That is so much a part of Dawson County, so it's nice to actually come on the heels of that to say, yes, your mountains are beautiful, yes, your lake is beautiful, but yes, the culture here in Dawson County is strong. There's an absolute unique sense of place and sense of identity here that we want to make sure that we capture. So, very quickly, what is a resilient community? Well, that's one that can, as I said, sort of withstand challenges, whether it's COVID challenges, whether it's, natural hazard challenges, whether it's an economic downturn, whether all of a sudden just the wheels fall off the economy and we have to figure out what to do. How do you diversify? How do you create a place in Dawson County? How do you create this economy that can withstand those changes? Well, one is you diversify it. Like any portfolio, you have a diverse economy. We want to look at sort of broadening that industrial base. What are the kinds of businesses you have? What are the kinds of businesses, industrial base, that you want so that you don't, all your eggs are not in one basket with a 2,000 person employer or even a 500 employee company. You want, a number of businesses that are also adaptable, that you're not turning the giant, cargo ship, but you're nimble, and so we want to help to create that. We want to really look at business retention and expansion efforts. Business retention and expansion efforts, and how do we adapt those? How do we look at those to, again, sort of create that resiliency? Provide supportive resources. Again, no time like COVID to have this conversation, but this is, even without COVID, how do we find out what those resources that businesses need, that we can provide them, both from a community perspective, public perspective, but also private perspective of how you connect and network folks. And then I think it's really important that and I'll come back to this one a little bit later, but keeping a pulse on potential disruptors. Having conversations, having these kinds of events, chamber events, having businesses talk to each other. You'll see that in the economic development staff will be reaching out more and more, just trying to understand what are the potential pitfalls, because the goal is to get in front of those and help businesses and community members overcome any obstacles. That's really important. Support people, I mentioned already. We need a flexible workforce training. Thank you to the new Be More, right? So making sure that we've got new folks coming into the workforce as well and there are lots of resources out there and it's tapping into them. This plan is taking a whole bunch of things that you already have and putting it in a package so that it's understandable to everybody. So it's not just Betsy trying to move it forward, but everybody can open it and understand exactly where they need to go. High quality life, that's what attracts people and that's how you keep them. Infrastructure investments, I mentioned that we want to really sort of focus in where you're going to be spending with that infrastructure, water, sewer, if you expand in telecommunications, et cetera, roads, greenways, as we'll talk about, and how to think about that and creating that resiliency. And then, of course, as I mentioned, that protecting the natural environment. So make it to the fun stuff. So it's all fun to me, but that's the overarching idea. What are we trying to do? So, first, focused development efforts. We have a strategy, we have some action that we're going to do. I'm going to summarize these because they'll bore you to tears. But we need to create policies and programs that encourage development of what we call priority development areas. I'm going to show you what those areas are, where we are recommending majority of effort and infrastructure goes into not a specific property, but in these general nodes, if you will, activity centers. And there's all sorts of things that you can do. As Christy mentioned, I'm working on the 453 overlay districts, design guidelines, streetscape requirements, green space requirements, getting maybe increased density in those, it's funny they call PDAs, right? But in those priority development areas, so that you can have that kind of sort of critical massing and the population in those areas to support additional retail, or have mixed-use developments that you don't have so many cars on the road. People can walk to work, they can walk to the retail, they can go down and have a coffee in the coffee shop, etc. So, and I'm not going to spend time on these maps, but just for you to see in general where your existing and planned infrastructure is. Water infrastructure, we are not looking anywhere in the northwest, and we're not looking in the west of the county. We are saying, our recommendation is that you maintain most of the activity down in your southeast corner, okay, of the county, because that's where your infrastructure is. You don't need to spend money sending it out there and, like I said, sort of disturbing that beautiful natural environment. Let's go ahead and focus development. It's not going to say that other things don't happen, but the majority of the effort, the majority of the commercial, and when I say high density, don't get freaked out, it's not high rises, right? But it's where you're going to have maybe some smaller lot sizes, something for new entry homeowners. Somebody just graduated from college. Last time we were here, somebody was living at home with their mother. I don't remember, I don't think she's here today, but it was you, wasn't it? No, it wasn't.
I went to college, but...
No, but you don't have a child at home. I didn't think so. Okay.
Yes, no, I do.
You do? Okay, wow. Are they living at home?
No, they're not.
Ouch. But anyway, it's something, so if somebody moves to the community, they have someplace to go before they make a final decision. So there's lots of pieces as to why we're looking at denser residential in some of these areas as well. We just don't want to litter the whole county with subdivisions. We want to maintain that beautiful natural, those beautiful natural resources. Same thing with sewer. No surprise. Sort of where we show where our priority development areas. I'm going to walk through those in sort of the khaki color, that dark green, and you can see we want sewer. We want the concentrated development to happen where that infrastructure is, and vice versa. So we presented what we see as we sort of look through what the anticipated service levels would be. So Edible Water and Sewer understands as they're doing their planning process, where to start looking, where to start investing, making sure that we're sort of all on the same page, so that they're not running a line this way and all the development is looking over here, right? So we'll take a look at that. I'm going too fast, you good? Everybody's okay? Got a lot to do. All right, so first, this is our overview. This is the focused development areas, or priority development areas. We identified, A through I, of general areas where we think, I'm going to show you piece by piece what kinds of developments we see happening in each of those areas. So they range, you can see again, this is a small section of the county, all from Dawsonville east to the southeast, mostly along the 400 corridor, some along 53, and then up into the city as well. So what do these look like? So we have this, we labeled them, this is not what their final name should be, but at least there are ways to identify them. We labeled it the State Route 53 mixed use. Just example photos to give you an idea of what it is that we're looking at. So if you look down here, you have, this is sort of the map area, the libraries here, you have the nice roundabout, the apartments going in, all of that area. Close proximity to 400, so there's some connections. We're always thinking about connections, about if this is mixed use, you're going to have residential. You're going to, so that's ease of getting back and forth to that, the retail and the services, and being able to move a little, folks right onto 400 or up and down 53 if they're going to jobs. But wouldn't it be great if we can have some commercial mixed use along 53, maybe, sort of that corridor development on the front, and then developing, thinking about going back. It's what we call horizontal mixed use, so not vertical, not where you have the stores on the first floor and then apartments above, but horizontal, so you're just kind of moving across the site, where you're going to have some commercial, some residential, higher density residential, maybe it's townhomes, there's some apartments going in over there. You're creating, like I said, these, almost like a little village center over there, something that it's not completely intact, but there's a lot of interconnectivity. So some industrial, there's some decent industrial property over there, you can connect it over to the industrial park. We love interconnectivity. Instead of having to go back out to main roads, how can we use greenways and other pathways to move people within parcels and intra-parcel connections as well. So we're looking, we said, oh, there's about 320 acres. This is where the visitor, Thomas and Hutton, said, yeah, it's 320 acres, but really what you're talking about is, 235 acres of actual developable, given restrictions on topo, et cetera. So somewhere in that area, and it's helpful for Betsy as she's trying to, promote different properties and land uses and say, oh, you want to build a mixed-use development? I got just the place for you. And send folks looking in this general area about where that could happen. So 45 acres of commercial mixed use, 150 net acres of industrial use, and maybe another 45 of different kinds of residential. Now, this is not next year's plan. This is 10, 15 years. I want you to think sort of the long game about this. How do you develop a node in this area to be able to create some economic activity and support the economic development goals? One of the things that we found was in conversations, Dawsonville is a nice pedestrian area or walkable-ish area, and right around here there's a lot of amenities. But you go down to 400, you go everywhere sort of east, and it's all car, it's all auto, right? Auto-centric. And so how are we creating these more walkable, pedestrian-friendly areas where you don't have to drive, park. I'm making sense? We're good? Thumbs up? Okay. I know they just gave us really fantastic Thanksgiving dinner, and I was going to say that was really mean, but I'm going to try my best. Okay. Because people get tired. Carbon. We've got Georgia 400 South. So retail has been extraordinarily successful in this county, and we did some analysis. I don't have the graphic in this one just for time, but we even looked at visits and sort of what was happening a year ago and then what happened with COVID over to the premium outlets. And then guess what? You were at, what was it, July, you were 75% back to. And I'm sure if we drive by, things are pretty close to back to normal. There are still, the retail study that we did, there are still opportunities for additional retail. We did a survey. I think some of you who were here filled it out. Where do you go? How often do you go? What brands would you like to see? And we did some retail analysis as well as to what the trade area is, the benefit for retail. You still have opportunities for retail here. It's incredible, actually, the draw here. It's the trade area, Dawson County Regional Trade Area, the annual demand is $1.5 billion in sales. It's incredible. They're coming from Atlanta, they're coming from all over, but it's a very, very strong retail area. The benefits of retail is it attracts outside money. Folks are coming in here. They, again, see this as a destination opportunity. It reduces leakage, so I'm sure you know about leakage. The community here is not going elsewhere to buy things, so we're returning that money over and over again in the community. And it does create diverse revenue opportunities, so not only property tax, but obviously this lost money and other revenue sources. Andy let us know that $6.8 million comes out of property tax revenue. Sorry. The retail generates $6.8 million in the budget for retail uses, which is nice. And it's about 4,800 jobs in the county. So we're saying that, all right, we still have some space, sporting goods, full-service restaurants, pharmacies, I think some limited service restaurants, all had some pretty good gaps still, meaning that there's still some opportunity in those. The survey was interesting. It was Target, it was sporting goods stores, it was Aldi's, Trader Joe's, I'd love to figure out how to get Trader Joe's to expand. I haven't yet. They're very protected, but all these are on the rise. They're always opening new stores. So all of that having been said, we see, if we're just looking at kind of standalone retail to the south, as you're sort of coming into the county, there's some property there that makes a lot of sense. But we don't want to just put, we're not encouraging retail by itself. What we're really supporting is retail with this new overlay district. And retail, you're going to see it again, that's connected with a greenway that goes up and down 400. You've got fantastic wide right of way. Wouldn't that be amazing to have some kind of multi-use trail that's protected from the cars flying down the road 70 miles an hour, but that you can have some interconnectivity from one end, to the other and throughout the county for bike trails, for multimodal people want to go running, whatever it is. These, in times of COVID too, haven't we seen that? Everybody wants to be outside. Planners have always been supporting multimodal pedestrian trail and green spaces. We are now seeing that people really are starting to enjoy those. They want to get out, get away from their families, but they want to get out and they really want to enjoy the outdoors. And what a beautiful place. So, kind of thinking about how we can introduce something like that into the 400 corridor to make it even more appealing, make more, again, sort of building on your existing assets. Certainly continuing the development patterns overall. Your larger retailers are going to want to be there, probably not your full service restaurants. The opportunities for entrepreneurial activity is fantastic here. You guys have a lot of untapped opportunities. Probably down there you're looking at the larger retailers because they need the traffic counts. They need those cars going by. And then of course I mentioned the guidelines. 75 net acres, highway-oriented retail, and as I mentioned, that trail system. So maybe something that looks a little bit like that, maybe a little bit closer to the street, but not much more, just because of the volume and being consistent. But those overlay district guidelines were really trying to emphasize sort of better parking lots, nicer looking parking lots that don't cover up the retail, but making it a little bit more inviting, a little bit more pedestrian and alternate friendly. So you guys are destination Dawsonville, destination Dawson County. Here's an opportunity, as I said before, some of the comments were that we don't have any place for people to gather, right? People walk down and walk along the street and that kind of thing, but there's no place to really gather. COVID world planners, we're seeing parking lots turning into outdoor dining experiences. We're going to encourage that. That's fantastic. So restaurants, you can sort of transform some of those season parking into a different environment. But we see a real opportunity just west of 400. You've got some activity already. You've got the outlets. This is an opportunity to help strengthen what's going on with the outlets, not replace them, but strengthen, give more reason for people to come. And now we're looking at vertically integrated, vertically mixed use, creating a little kind of village center down here, some place where you could have an amphitheater. You could have a trailhead that goes along, goes over Dawson Forest all the way out to Dawson Forest Road out to Dawson Forest. Some place for people to gather, a community space that's complementary to the other ones that we're creating. So this is not replacing anything else. This is offering alternates, right? More places for people to come and more places for people to be. So we see this sort of rethinking and reimagining Luncheon Campground Road into something that has a better pedestrian experience. Again, sort of trailhead, by getting things, an activity center, if you will, in that area in the long term, integrating what's already there. Questions about that? It's kind of fun. And then I guess one thing I wanted to provide from the report was this is something that Nextsite had done, and that was really looking at resilient retail and how do you help support the long term of the outlets, right? How do you help to augment what they're doing there and vice versa, so they can support. This is an example in Colorado. It was an old outlet center that they actually put a park into. They had a nice river running in there. That's always a nice feature to have. But they were actually able to expand across and really revitalize the area by creating not just a shopping center, but a destination location. And so, we don't know. We're recommending additional relationships with Simon property, thinking about if any area of that needs to be repurposed, allowing for hotels, restaurants, conference centers. There's a lot of things, and just being flexible, wanting the county to be flexible, and again, sort of seeing the long game about what you can do in that area by creating a destination space, a public space, public and private. Next one is industrial expansion. I'm almost done with these, I promise. You have some existing industrial space right off of 53, and so this is how does Betsy sort of market this for existing industrial, existing industrial land? How do we continue that pattern, if you will? That's the best place to probably put industrial by itself. It's about 120 acres of space that would be available. And we really sort of see, and that's one of the things that we're working on with the overlay district, is what should industry look like, industrial uses look like? How do we have their, how do they face the public right away? How do you dress them up a little bit, but also not make it so it's cost prohibitive to develop? So really thinking about, when we talk about targeted industries, this is where this would go. Our Georgia 400 North mixed use, if you know where you are, just north of 53, there's some vacant land there. Again, we see another opportunity for an integrated development where you're maximizing the highway commercial with commercial and retail uses along the front. So it's kind of that horizontal line. But mixing in, look at, you've got this incredible broadband. A lot of communities would just die for it, have that, going right up to 400. So how do you leverage that and attract technology, right? Office park technology. You can offer that here that a lot of other communities in Georgia would just love to have. So thinking about the mixed-use nature at the 400, something that's going to really, like we said, require the traffic counts, maybe an office technology park in the back a little bit, getting some residential mixed in there, some townhomes, some slightly higher density, and maybe even some industrial use. You probably have about 150 acres, depending, that you could use as well. So that's overall that entire area, really, again, thinking about creating not these segregated uses, but these mixed uses. I think there have been some proposals back and forth up in that area before. We really think that mix of uses supports both the workforce. We're trying to create that, supporting the community residents by giving them someplace to live and someplace to work, and then still have some retail opportunity. And then we also would like to see the green space and greenway connectivity. It's such a beautiful area that one of the pieces you'll see again that we'd like to really require is some level of green space dedication for projects of a certain size, right? Or connectivity to a greenway. That's again the long game, but we're working on it. Our professional services corridor, there's a lot. So this is, we looked at, you've got Forsyth, the hospital in Forsyth, you've got the medical center in Lumpkin, and you are smack dab in the middle with 400 as your lovely corridor between the two. Fantastic. Perfect for medical services. As I mentioned, you've got your all of the other infrastructure that could attract sort of higher technology. These lots here are a little bit, they're not quite as deep. So really thinking about how do you front sort of this area, give or take, with medical office buildings, with office parks, sort of shallow office parks. We really see if Betsy has somebody call up and say, hey, I need some acreage and I'm looking for some office space, I've got just a place for you to start looking. Is that places where we would send others. And that's about 70 acres. And that's really what we see because you've got the neighborhoods backing up there, the lake is coming up, we want to make sure we're conscientious of the kinds of uses in that area. This one was a delightful surprise to us as we dug deeper, and that's the Russell Creek Reservoir, this 135-acre reservoir that is under construction, and I think 2023 they're starting to fill it, if I recall, something to that effect. It's about 1,100 acres around it. We kind of looked at it and said, what could you do with that? Everybody likes lakefront property, it's hard to come by. One of the biggest challenges is not having it all divided up into private property, no one else has access. So we see this as a real economic development opportunity to create, and this is just an example of what it would look like, where you've got still access, clearly not the exact size, but you come in and you have some public access to it. And we'll talk about the economic development opportunities that go along with that, small businesses. Still having other communities, there was a picture over there that showed the traditional subdivision, you know, the gray pattern, loops and lollipops, the whole thing, and it limits you. Everybody gets their half-acre or acre lots, and not everybody then has access to this incredible amenity, if you will. So we kind of look at this as an opportunity to maybe do some different housing types. Some smaller, this is just a park, I think Brian called it sort of this park style, different kind of housing type that you normally wouldn't see, just an example, but something that would fit on a smaller lot size, so you could still have some lakefront property, or even some sort of off-site but with access, and just creating that environment that really feels much more natural. Because of our link, it's not just about providing housing at the lake, anybody can do that, but how do we create economic opportunity? So here, you've got retailers, you've got hopefully manufacturers, we've been thinking about sort of manufacturers that would come. Wouldn't it be cool to have retailers, let's say that have your outfitters, and say, you want to buy a kayak? Come over here and you can try it out at the lake, right? Or you want to learn about fishing? My family's all from New England, so El Bean is my go-to for outdoor stuff. If anybody been to Freeport, Maine? When you go to Freeport, Maine, you know what they do? They offer classes. They will take you out and teach you how to fly fish. They will teach you how to do everything, teach you how to canoe, the whole thing. It's El Bean. But how do you start to utilize these resources, not just this reservoir, but in general? We want you guys thinking about creative ways about how you take a retailer and how they utilize the natural environment and your resources and your assets here to help augment their business. So maybe it's, you know, you get the Merrill store, there's a Merrill's Columbia. Want to go try hiking? We're going to have a hiking club on Saturdays, and we're going to go around, and here's where it is. So we're trying to connect the two, not have them be disparate. We've got this retailer that's here, and that's it. You drive up, you buy your shoes, and you go. It's you come up here, and there's a hiking club, and there's a whole bunch of other, you can try out this equipment here. There was the suggestion when we get to the Greenway piece of bike, hike, and kayak. They were trying to call it kayak, it didn't sound right, so it was the general idea. But the idea that you could have these kinds of different things that would go along with your Greenway Trail. So you're thinking, oh, I gotta go, oh boy, I can talk forever, you see? All right, moving on. All right, so really thinking about this as outdoor recreation. I can zip those. Does that make sense? So there's lots of opportunities on where to focus development. And how do we do that? Well, we're also going to try to have to shift gears now. Prioritize business retention and expansion. I talked about that earlier. There are some concrete steps in which these guys are going to start doing it, and they're going to need all the help they can get mustered from all of you as well. And that is going on and having, and I just pulled this from your website because it's really nice. You have an existing industry profile up there. So you've got some businesses you can go and talk to and understand what their challenges are. Have conversations, because the goal is we're trying to create a regional economy. So surveying businesses, having site visits, bringing in the state economic development, bringing in the workforce people, having conversations on a regular basis to look, have that finger on the pulse of the disruptors, right? You want to get ahead of those. And then creating programs and incentives that address This is actually where you get the most jobs from expansion efforts, right? So retention and expansion efforts are super important, and we're providing tools to get there. The second one is our targeted industries. So we looked at your existing labor force, your programs that you have in the different educational and workforce training programs in the area, what's going on in terms of regional activity, Hall County, Forsyth County, Luncheon, what's going on, how do you take advantage of that? We're not trying to steal anything, we're trying to build upon it, right? So we can find some supply chain opportunities, that's what we want to do. So the target industries, we sort of figured 5 very, very general categories: advanced and light manufacturing, consistent with what the vision is here, and the gifts and assets that you have. Professional business and technology services, you saw that on the corridors and with what your assets are. Medical services support. You've got the hospital on both ends, you've got a great population to accommodate it, and so there you go. And then the nature, tourism, and related activities. Those are our targeted industries we're recommending. Marketing Dawson County, of course, right? How do you get the name out? How do you get the word out there? Dawson County is I don't want to call you open for business. You're open for select business, right? You're not just throw your doors wide open and see what comes. You've identified target industries that work with the community, and then you let everybody know what's going on. So there's just some kind of specific recommendations. We want to bring the Georgia Economic Development Department up here, whether it's the unveiling of the plan or there's some industry visits, special events. They need to know. The more they know about you, the more they're going to bring prospects here. And you did a great job, by the way, with your site selection, with the putting the properties up. That's huge, because so much now, not just COVID, so much is done on the internet. And how do we identify, when I was a site selector, how do we find sites easily? We don't want to have to reach out to every single community. It's too time consuming. Supporting community residents. I'm going as fast as I can, Kristen, I'm sorry. Just real quickly, so housing, we already talked about housing. We just want to make sure that there's housing opportunities for the workforce, for all ages. Thank you for the assisted living facility coming in, right? Just put my mom in one, fantastic, best thing she ever did. And that's important because these are members of the community you want to be able to service when they're very young, when they want to come back from when they've gone off to school, or they want to stay here, whatever, you want to be able to accommodate them. That's super important. Good work has already been done, and we're encouraging that to continue. Just a minute about workforce development and being able to sort of pivot, words of Ross, if you guys watch Friends, pivot, and be flexible, and making sure that you're doing things and working with all of you, apprenticeships, internships, getting to the schools, utilizing the college and career academies, using the workforce training that's out there, the incentives that are already out there, making sure all the businesses know about them and that the residents know what they have access to. Really, really important. Rich, you've already got lots of resources there to tap into. You don't have to reinvent the wheel on that. And then the last one is sort of protecting and conserving the natural resources. We can talk about all of those. I think one thing we've done, and I'm really delighted about it, is we opened up the conversations with the City of Atlanta about Dawson Forest. And so we're hoping to make sure that Dawson County is a sort of in coordination and collaboration with whatever they're looking at, so it's not some surprise. So that's really exciting about nature and cultural tourism. You already talked about a little bit about what you've done this last week in addition to the rest of it. But Ryan would kill me if I didn't get to this particular slide, which is our Greenway slide. So Ryan is our landscape architect who's been working with Betsy and the county in general about how do we see this all being interconnected. This is an economic development project. This right here, greenways and green spaces, parks and amenities are economic development projects as much as putting in an industrial park. Okay? It's not just about quality of life, it's about interconnectivity. So we are looking at just 30,000 foot level, right? If we're looking down, you can see the 400 path that would take you along. If we're looking at right away, how do we get it? How do we build it? How do we encourage people to use it? How do we integrate that with economic development opportunities for retailers, manufacturers, et cetera, to tell them this is such a great place to be that we put our money where our mouth is? Then we've got sort of the Dawson Forest Greenway Trail that, remember, I was talking to go all the way from the lake, through that mixed use, through our little destination Dawson County, the whatever that ends up being, the little village, all the way over and along the river over to Dawson Forest. Fantastic. People would flock up here, whether it's a small amount or a larger amount. Another one is sort of 53, trying to imagine pedestrian bicycle improvements, how that would be. And then the last one is our Etowah River Trail, which starts up in that mixed-use space, connects down to Dawson Forest, perhaps, goes up to the reservoir and into Dawsonville. Part of it's a blueway. A blueway is when you can hop on, and utilize the river and having things along the river as well. So I think that's fantastic, and that would absolutely positively set you apart, and that's pretty exciting. So did I do it? Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I just love this. Clearly.
Any questions, though?
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
We need to work on our communication infrastructure in this county, particularly with COVID, internet, and cell service in many areas. Stinks.
Beyond the 400, right?
Yeah, 400 is great, showing meters. I'm on the east side, but also on the west side. I didn't know I was going to run into that, so.
Absolutely.
Very
That's
sad.
something we all definitely keep in mind, I will say, and we constantly advocate for, which, believe it or not, in the 8 years I've been here, it has vastly improved. So I know that's crazy, we continue to push for that, but hopefully as y'all can tell from this plan, we take to heart how beautiful it is here. We're not advocating ever for a 10-story building, not anything like that. Really trying to make sure that we just enhance what we already have. Because I will say one thing I find frustrating is we have all these beautiful places. Many of them are not accessible at all. Both from an ADA point of view aren't accessible, or also they might all be on private property. Or it's difficult. We're working on getting some more canoe put-ins right now on the Etowah River, making sure that if you're going to live here for all these beautiful reasons, that you can actually access a greenway or do that, in a way that makes it enjoyable and safe. Safety is certainly a big priority for all of us, and so I will say I have noticed recently so many people running on 400. Why? Of all the places you could run in our county this morning, I noticed a guy doing it. It's all the time. I just feel like I'd be worried about getting forced. And so, if you do have any comments or feedback you want to provide me or Betsy anytime, you'll know how to find us. But when they don't have questions, the quick reminders I wanted to give you: we do not have a luncheon in December. Since our last one of the year, so thanks for joining us. We will have business after hours in December. Look in Chamber Chatter for an announcement about it. We're in kind of the final planning stages to make sure we can still have it, but be COVID friendly. So we'll probably have it at Racing Hall of Fame or somewhere big with a big space. But we know that's a really cherished community event. And if you've never been, we hope you'll join us. It's always lots of fun. Plus, we're going to give away a lot of money this year. I can't remember exactly how much, but I think we're close to $2,000, if not over. So, if you're a member, you are eligible to win that. So hopefully you'll join us for that, and of course, Christmas parade and tree lighting. But it's been great to see y'all today, and we look forward to seeing you in December. Everyone have a happy Thanksgiving.